Lord of the Sad and Lonely, Leader of the Delinquents, The Humming King. I'm ranking Kid Cudi's top albums today. You guys know how it goes. Solo full-length studio albums only, no mixtapes, no compilations albums. That means no Wizard, no Kids See Ghosts with Kanye, or A Kid Named Cudi, although A Kid Named Cudi would be high up there if I included the mixtapes. But, I mean, Kid Cudi, I can't believe I haven't done this countdown yet. Like, everyone loves Cudi, and he's a hometown hero of mine. He went to Shaker Heights High School, just down the road from where I went to high school, so we're gonna get right into it. Kid Cudi has always just made kids feel so not alone, you know? Like, that's literally why he's called, like, Lord of the Sad and Lonely. Like, he's just a hero to those kids because he's so relatable, and so many kids, don't feel alone when they listen to his music. But at number 6, I have Speedin Bullet to Heaven. I don't know, that probably doesn't come as a surprise to many people because this was Cudi's venture into punk music, and I know he's always been influenced in punk culture, and he's always wanted to release something like this, and this was released in 2015, so he had already been done with Kanye's Good Music label, and he wanted to move on to do his own sound. Many of his fans weren't into it, and I don't think it received the best reviews by critics, but I think it wasn't bad. I don't think it was as bad as many people thought it was. I think there were definitely some notable songs on it, and it was also very cool and funny. Now, I don't know if many people know this, because I feel like when people just turn it on, like real, like Cudi fans, they would just turn it off because they were like, this is good old classic Cudi. But they had the voices of Beavis and Butthead narrate some of this album, and it was absolutely hilarious. You gotta check out those Beavis and Butthead clips on the album. Very funny cameos, but nonetheless, my favorite songs were Confused, The Nothing, and Embers. Coming in at number 5, I have Satellite Flight, the first album after Cudi was released from Good Music, Kanye's record label. This album, I think, was very underrated, released in 2014. This album helped me snooze every night for about 2 years. No cap. Like, if I didn't have this Cudi album on, if I didn't have my Satellite Flight on my iPod, I wasn't falling asleep that night. And I think it was underrated because it does have a lot of instrumentals on it that Cudi produced, and in the mid-2010s or early 2010s, not many people were into just the instrumentals as they are now. Like, lo-fi is huge now, and I feel like if it came out now, it would have a little bit of different reception because a lot of those instrumentals do take you on quite the journey. But he does pour his heart into it, and it does feel like you're in a rocket ship drifting through space, drifting through the stars. Like, this album will take you places if you listen to it. I was a big fan of it. My favorite songs were Satellite Flight, Balmain Jeans, Too Bad I Have to Destroy You Now, and Troubled Boy. At number 4, I have Passion, Pain, and Demon Slayin. This was his latest solo album to be released. This was released in 2016, and I think it was a very good comeback album from his Speedin Bullet to Heaven punk release. It had a little bit of that more classic Cudi sound that people love, a little bit more Indicud sound, I think, in Satellite Flight than Man on the Moon, which everyone wanted him to release a Man on the Moon 3, and I think at some points he gave clues and hints to it, but then he just said it wasn't going to be happening because maybe he's just moved on from it or whatever. But we don't want you to move on from it, Cudi. We want a Man on the Moon 3. But like I said, it was a good comeback album. It was a tad lengthy, but like, I'm not really complaining. There were maybe a couple songs that I'm just like, it's okay, but many songs on it do the job for me. I was very happy with it, and it felt like you were in a fantasy world, which, I mean, that's what Kid Cudi does the best, right? It's just like you're living in a dream world or a fantasy world. Had some good features on it with Andre 3000, Jaden Smith, and Travis Scott. And I remember when Surfin' came out with Pharrell, that was like the lead single to the album. I thought that song was amazing, and I really hoped the whole album had that sound, you know, like with the trumpets, very upbeat. But then once the album came out, like the rest of the album had more of that, you know, fantasy world Cudi. Not that Surfin' isn't like, outer spacey. Well, no, it not really is. It's not really. It's a lot of fun and upbeat, whereas the rest of the album was a little more fantasy dreamland, but I still loved it. Great album. My favorite songs were Baptized in Fire with Travis Scott, Rose Golden with Jaden Smith, Dance for Eternity, Surfin', and Kitchen. I think Dance for Eternity is an underrated song. You gotta check that one out. At number 3, I have Indicud. This was Cudi's last solo effort with Kanye's Good Music label, and I'll tell you something about this. I remember when Indicud came out, they said they were going to sell like a certain amount of the albums under Kanye's Good Music label, which I'm a huge fan of. If you don't know, I love all the artists under Good Music. I love Good Music so much. And only a certain amount of the CDs would have that Good Music stamp with like the Good Music Angel and the Good logo. I think it was either like 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, maybe 50,000, something like that had this Good Music stamp on it, and the rest just had his label on it. And I remember getting the CD like the day it came out, and it had that Good Music label on it, which means I had the first batch of CDs. I'll probably show it to you guys next week because I think I'm going to show some CDs, but I was so glad I got that record with the Good Music stamp on it, which I think it should be worth more than the regular CD, but we'll see. I think this album was a little more underrated also, just because it was right after the Man on the Moons and it had a lot to live up to, and people were expecting a Man on the Moon 3, but instead they got Indicud, which is okay. The singles I think were, what were they? I don't know if Just What I Am was a lead single, but King Wizard and Immortal, and I love those songs. Those songs were great lead singles, but I will tell you, Solo Dolo Part 2 got completely snubbed by everyone. That song is so good. I don't care what anyone says. That song is not as like hyped by the people as it should be. Solo Dolo Part 2 with Kendrick Lamar, obviously a second part to Cudi's Solo Dolo on the Man on the Moon 1 album. That song is so good. The production on it, Kendrick's verse, Kendrick kills the hook and Cudi kills his verse on it. Such a good song. It's an all-time track, and it's just sad that it didn't get the spotlight that it should. But on this album, I mean, you had Just What I Am, King Wizard, Immortal, Girls, features with A$AP Rocky, King Chip, RZA, Too Short, Kendrick. I mean, on paper, this album looks like a classic album, and I think it was. I just think it was a bit underrated. I think it deserves to shine a little bit more. That's all I'm saying. So, doesn't stand as tall as the other Man on the Moons, of course, but I still think it deserves a shine. My favorite songs were Immortal, Solo Dolo Part 2, and Red Eye. I think Red Eye is a really great song. So, Indicud number 3. Right above Indicud, if I were to include mixtapes, which I hold those full-length solo studio albums to a little bit higher standard than just mixtapes, but I would have had A Kid Named Cudi right above Indicud. But at number 2, I have Man on the Moon 2. So I have Man on the Moon 2 at number 2. The Legend of Mr. Rager. I mean, this was when Mr. Rager came out, and people went crazy for it. Obviously, it was the sequel to Man on the Moon 1, and Man on the Moon 1 just did so good that this had a lot of hype to live up to, and it lived up to that hype, no doubt. This album was a little more of like a downer album for like, you know, Leader of the Delinquents and Lord of the Sad and Lonely and things like that, whereas Man on the Moon 1, it was a little bit more uplifting and like Heart of a Lion and, you know, Day and Night and stuff like that. But this album was showing more of his dark side and maybe even a little more personal than the first Man on the Moon. It definitely had a lot of cushy vibes to it, and if you had that CD or maybe even the vinyl, if you see that artwork on the inside, I mean, I'm just saying, if you know, you know. A lot of dope vibes on Man on the Moon 2. Loved it. Great follow-up. A lot of good features. My favorite songs were Ghost, Mr. Rager, Erase Me, and Rev a Vev. I remember when that Erase Me music video came out with Kanye. Such a good video. And coming in at number 1, it's not a surprise. It's Man on the Moon 1, The End of Day. I mean, this was released in 2009, right at like the peak of just great hip-hop in between 2000s and early 2010s. I mean, this is just the most classic Cudi album. Everybody knows it. Kanye made sure that Cudi's debut album was perfect, and it really was. From the production side, lyrics side, songwriters, everything, Cudi had it going. Had features from Kanye, Common, Rat-a-Tat, of course, Pursuit of Happiness, King Chip, and I mean, like I said, you just had that classic 2000 sound with a futuristic twist. Felt like an adventure, and on this album, it felt like Cudi was a superhero, and Kid Cudi is a superhero to many kids. He helps so many kids mentally, and just what he does, I think he knows it, but if he doesn't, like Cudi, you make a lot of kids' days and lives easier by being able to relate to everyone, and that's just something that not every artist can do, and I think it's very special. When Soundtrack to My Life came out, I remember my friend Luke was just listening to it nonstop so that he could memorize the lyrics, because everyone wanted to memorize the lyrics. Like, it was the cool thing to do, and it's just so much fun, and everyone wanted to sing along to the songs together. They were all just so good. He did add songs from the mixtape, A Kid Named Cudi. So there were songs on this album that he added from the mixtape, like Day and Night, Man on the Moon, Is There Any Love, and I think TGIF was from the mixtape too that he added. So that's why like mixtapes and albums get a little, you know, iffy with the countdowns, but it's classic Cudi. I hope he tops it with future albums. I really hope that maybe like one day in the long future that he retires with like Man on the Moon 3 and it brings it full circle or something like that. I think everyone would really love to see that. A Man on the Moon 3, no doubt. So my favorite songs were Make Her Say, Alive, Simple As, and Soundtrack to My Life. And that is my Kid Cudi top albums countdown. If you have any discrepancies, comment them down below. Let me know what countdown you want to see for next week. And that's all I have. Let me know what you think of Kid Cudi. Let me know your favorite songs. Let me know where you would rank them. And that's all I got. Listen to my music on all streaming platforms. Thank you for watching today. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like, and follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EJSpark1. That's all I got. As always, it's peace, love. I love s'mores. EJ out.